Hey my little earthlings, tonight, let's explore this parallel Earth together, where our ancestors never had to say goodbye to their giant companions, and where the relationship between human and megafauna evolved in ways we can barely imagine. If you're settling in for the evening wherever you are in the world, take a deep breath and let your mind wander to a place where the impossible became everyday, and the everyday was nothing short of magical. Imagine now entering a doorway in time as well as space. Here, the air feels different, crisp, with an old world energy that makes your arms stand on end. This valley was somehow traversed by the great dying that took the mammoths, cave bears, and giant ground sloths, and you find yourself on the edge of a world that never quite let go of its ice age giants. You see shapes that shouldn't be there as the morning mist rises from a river that has no name in any contemporary language. A family of woolly rhinoceroses glides through the tall grass at a leisurely pace, their thick coats shining with dew. Like ancient ivory sculptures, their horns gleam in the early morning light. The ground trembles a little in the distance, not from an earthquake, but from the deliberate steps of something impossibly large moving toward the water's edge. It could have been, but this is not our world. The great extinction that struck the planet some 12,000 years ago never quite finished its job on this planet. Humans learned to coexist with creatures that seem to have been lifted from both nightmares and dreams, and Pleistocene-era pockets persisted like lost chapters in an ancient book. Even in the dead of winter, the village remains warm because it is situated in a natural depression between two hills that perfectly directs the wind. Now, however, it is not winter. Rather, it is the season known to the locals as the growing light, when the sun continues to shine longer each day and the ice flowers in the fields outside the settlement start to bloom. As it has for generations, morning arrives here with gentleness. Though she stopped counting years ago when the number reached more fingers than she could spare, Nayeli is always the first to rise. The cold stone floor of her home aggravates her joints, but they have been complaining about it for decades, and she has learned to ignore them. She steps into air so pure, it seems to ring like a bell, pushing aside the mammoth hide that acts as her door. Below her, the village stretches out, maybe 30 houses made of wood, stone, and bone, their roofs covered in grass and dirt. A number of chimneys emit smoke, but it's not the sharp stench of anything burning that shouldn't be there. Rather, it's the sweet smoke of pine and dried mammoth dung. The grazing grounds where the most eccentric people in the village spend their nights are visible from Nayeli's doorway. 3 young mammoths stand close to a group of birch trees, hardly bigger than the elephants you might see in zoos around the world. They touch each other in what appears to be conversation as their trunks move continuously, testing the air. They were born here, raised with human children, and fed by human hands when their own mothers were unable to produce enough milk, so they are not wild animals. Even after all these years, the sight continues to amaze her. One of the first people to suggest that they might not have to hunt every big animal they came across was her great-grandfather. In order to benefit both species, maybe some could be brought close, given care, and permitted to coexist with humans. Back then, it had seemed impossible. Now, it seems like the most natural thing in the world to watch a human toddler giggle close by as a mammoth calf tosses dirt onto its back. But coming to this realization had not been simple. The ancient tales, the ones that have been handed down through the ages like priceless jewels, describe the period of education, when people first realized that they were living in a world with minds that were different from their own, but still minds. As usual, the morning routine starts. With arms full of wild grasses and new branches, Kyle, one of the village's beast speakers, approaches the mammoth enclosure. He moves deliberately and walks slowly. The mammoths are familiar with him and have faith in him, but daily respect needs to be reaffirmed. The largest of the 3, a female they refer to as Stormwalker because of her apparent ability to forecast weather patterns, greets him by extending her trunk. Since he was just old enough to walk steadily, Kale has worked with mammoths. Before him, his father, and before that, his father's father had been a beast speaker. Although the ability isn't strictly inherited, it appears to run in some families like a river that travels the same path. Above all, it takes patience. The patience to realize that, depending on its pitch and duration, a mammoth's rumbling can indicate warning, greeting, contentment, or hunger. The forbearance to realize that what appears to be stubbornness may actually be an effort to convey a crucial message. Placing the fodder aside, he presses his hand to Stormwalker's side and feels her heart's slow, strong beat. As is typical for her kind, she has been pregnant for almost 2 years. If everything goes according to plan, the village will welcome its first mammoth born solely under human care in a few months. He feels proud and anxious at the same time. Although they have gained a great deal of knowledge about maintaining the health and happiness of adult mammoths, bringing a new life into the world is always a risk. Other villagers start their daily chores as the sun rises higher. Human voices and the occasional trumpet call of a mammoth blend with the sound of stone tools cutting wood and bone. Youngsters engage in activities that any parent would recognize, such as tag, hide and seek, and basic skill competitions. But the animals on their playground are completely larger than them. Siku, who is only 8 years old, has declared one of the mammoth calves to be her special friend. She is currently sitting next to the young bull in the grass, and they are both observing 2 enormous beavers as they construct their dam in the stream that flows past the village. Compared to their smaller cousins that live in our world, these beavers are completely different. They are bear-sized, have chisel-like teeth, and have an engineering instinct that rivals that of human builders. The village and the giant beavers have a more cooperative than proprietorship relationship. The ponds and streams that supply fresh water and draw fish are kept up by the beavers. In exchange, the humans share some of the foods that the beavers especially like, such as young shoots and roots that humans collect but don't need for themselves, and defend the beavers' territory from the enormous cave bears that occasionally wander down from the mountains. It took generations to create and preserve this intricate web of relationships. Every species in this valley has established a place for itself through a sort of negotiated coexistence that necessitates ongoing care and adaptation rather than dominance or submission. As is customary during the growing light, the afternoon brings tourists to the village. 3 adults and 2 children lead what looks to be a wounded giant ground sloth as they approach from the south. The humans next to the sloth provide gentle support and encouragement as it moves slowly, favoring its right back leg. They're not strangers, but they're also not villagers. They come from a community 2 days' walk away that was dedicated to caring for the enormous sloths that used to roam these areas in great numbers. In addition to being a creature in need of assistance, the injured animal serves as a bridge between groups of people who have come to understand that they are a part of a wider family that includes species other than their own. In keeping with tradition, Nayeli extends her hand's palms up to greet the guests, indicating that she is harmless and does not carry any weapons. The gesture is returned, and soon the entire group is heading toward the village's healing grounds, where animal medicine practitioners practice and store their supplies. Both physically and culturally, the healing grounds hold a unique position in the village. They are situated in a grove of old trees that appear to have existed here since the beginning of time, close to the settlement's center. In addition to offering cover, the trees appear to calm both people and animals. Some residents of the village think that the trees themselves have therapeutic properties. Others believe it's just that the grove maintains optimal recovery conditions by remaining warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. Between these opinions is most likely where the truth lies. The injured sloth is examined by Jorik, the village's expert healer, using hands that have learned to read trauma and pain just by touch. Despite its size and powerful claws, the sloth is remarkably patient during the examination. The villagers have discovered that these animals are inherently kind unless they are in danger or defending their young. This one appears to be aware that people are attempting to assist it. It looks like a deep cut that might have resulted from falling onto jagged rocks. The animal is clearly uncomfortable and moves slowly, which can be explained by the infection. Jorik uses fungi and herbs that he learned how to collect and prepare from his teachers to make a poultice. Both humans and animals can benefit from some of these treatments. Others are species specific, acquired over many generations through meticulous observation and the occasional tragic error. Jorik tells the tale of how his people initially discovered how to cure the enormous ground sloths while he is at work. Perhaps 50 years ago, during a particularly severe winter, a small group of sloths were stranded in a canyon by an avalanche. After all, why risk human lives for creatures that weren't even under human control? The humans could have left them to their fate. However, the humans were prompted to act by the way the stranded sloths cried out to one another, as well as by their apparent distress and intelligence. They planned a rescue and cleared enough rock for the sloths to escape using wooden levers and ropes. Instead of abandoning the animal that had suffered severe injuries in the avalanche, the humans brought it back to their community and made an effort to treat its injuries. They learned a lot about the physiology and behavior of sloths from the process. More significantly, the creature appeared to recall what the humans had done even after it recovered. It didn't go very far when it was at last strong enough to go back into the wild. It stayed close to the human settlement, and when other sloths in the area became injured or ill, word somehow got to this first patient who would lead the sick to the humans for assistance. This relationship developed into something special over time. The sloths started exchanging information about which roots and plants were safe to eat and which were not. Their digestive systems were capable of processing foods that humans would find poisonous, but they were also able to find safe substitutes that people had never thought of. Humans reciprocated by offering medical attention and defense against the enormous predators that even enormous ground sloths occasionally couldn't repel on their own. The injured sloth appears to be getting better as evening draws near. Much of the infection has been drawn out by the poultice, and the animal is breathing more easily now. The prognosis is good, but treatment will take a few more days. The guests from the southern settlement are cordially invited to remain in the village while their companion recovers. As usual, the evening meal is a communal event. Both residents and guests are seated at long tables made of split logs, and the food symbolizes the abundance that results from coexisting peacefully with the environment. Mammoth milk cheese, fish from the beaver ponds, berries and nuts collected from the forest, and vegetables cultivated in gardens, fertilized with mammoth dung and strategically positioned close to the dwellings to keep out smaller herbivores. The villagers brew fermented berry wine in ceramic pots, and as the meal goes on, stories start to flow as freely. In addition to others they have met along the way, the visitors share news from their settlement. By caring for a herd of giant deer that roams between their lands, 3 villages to the east are reportedly forming a new alliance. Strange tracks have been reported to have been discovered close to the northern mountains. These could be the remains of a species that is believed to be extinct, even in this world where extinction appears to have been avoided. Old Henrik, whose memory goes back farther than anyone else's, recounts the Great Choice story once more, but he does so in a unique way each time, as though the tale were a living entity that evolved and changed with each retelling. Instead of merely hunting the megafauna to extinction, it tells the tale of how their ancestors managed to coexist with them. Humans realized they were at a crossroads at one point, Henrik said. They were extremely proficient hunters thanks to the tools and methods they had developed. They were capable of defeating animals that were many times their size, and they had started to do so successfully that some species were going extinct. They had to decide whether to keep going in this direction and use their powers to assert their superiority over all other species, or to look for an alternative. Dominance was argued for by some. Humans were shrewd and flexible. They could change the world to their benefit if they could get rid of possible rivals and dangers. Others argued for an alternative strategy, one that acknowledged the enormous creatures in their environment as partners in the intricate dance of life that maintained the world's equilibrium rather than just as resources to be eaten. The argument was not easily or swiftly resolved. For generations, it was unclear what would happen because different groups made different decisions. However, communities that opted for partnership gradually started to prosper in ways that those that opted for dominance did not, through trial and error, success and failure. The partnership approach necessitated learning new abilities. Humans had to learn how to comprehend, interact with, and take care of animals rather than just how to hunt them. They had to learn psychology and behavior, medicine and nutrition, and the delicate art of interspecies negotiation. However, the benefits were remarkable. A mammoth was more valuable alive than dead because it offered labor, transportation, and cooperation in tasks that no human could complete on their own, in addition to milk and the occasional fur. Living water management systems were created by giant beavers. Ground sloths developed into walking botanical encyclopedias. When properly understood and respected, even the dreadful cave bears proved to be excellent collaborators for some kinds of work. The fire in the middle of the village burns low as Henrik's story comes to a close, creating dancing shadows on the faces surrounding it. Stormwalker trumpets softly in the distance, and other mammoths from settlements over the horizon respond to her call. This village is connected to a network of communities throughout the continent by this sound, which unites them all in their shared vision of a world in which megafauna and humans coexist as allies rather than adversaries. The villagers gradually start to return to their homes as the fire goes out and the stars come out. However, some people still exist, especially the younger adults, who frequently use these evenings to talk about their own dreams and stories. As usual, the topic of discussion shifts to the future tonight. A young woman named Mira talks about her dream of creating new trade routes that would link far-flung communities. Mira has demonstrated remarkable skill in working with the giant deer that come to the village every spring. She imagines mammoth-led caravans that can transport goods over great distances and through difficult-to-navigate terrain. Her friend Jorik the Younger, who is named after the healer but is unrelated, discusses his selective breeding experiments in an attempt to create mammoth strains that might be smaller and better suited for particular jobs. It's a contentious endeavor because some people feel that altering the ancient animals in any way betrays the alliance that has so successfully benefited both species. Others contend that helping these species adjust to a changing environment is just another example of cooperation, and that adaptation and change are inherent aspects of life. A low rumbling sound that seems to originate from the earth itself breaks up the conversation. Everyone freezes for a second, listening carefully. The 8-year-old Siku, who has made friends with the mammoth calf, then bursts into happy laughter. She points to the sleeping area where the young mammoth lies on his side, his legs twitching as though he were running while he slept. "He's dreaming again," she says. The rumbling sound is his sleep trumpeting, which the villagers have come to associate with especially vivid mammoth dreams. The tense moment gives way to laughter. There are moments of unadulterated joy that remind everyone why they chose this path, even in a world where humans coexist with animals that could easily kill them. Whatever dreams the young mammoth may have, they appear to be joyful ones. The final discussions around the fire shift to more subdued topics as the night grows darker. Work plans for tomorrow, worries about relatives in other communities, and soft rumors of romances blossoming and alliances developing between people and their animal companions. Even these discussions eventually wane as the village falls asleep. It's not a quiet sleep though. The breathing of sleeping mammoths, the splash of enormous beavers laboring in the moonlight, and the distant cry of a cave bear resonating from the mountains are just a few of the sounds that fill the night and would be incomprehensible to our contemporary ears. These are not the sounds of peril, but rather of a world in which all living things are aware of their place and function within the larger scheme of things. For a while longer, Nayeli lies awake in her home, listening to these night sounds and reflecting on the day that has gone by. The wounded sloth is recovering nicely. The mammoth pregnancy is developing as it should. The kids are becoming resilient and acquiring the abilities necessary to uphold the alliances their forefathers formed. However, she also considers the difficulties that will come. Though not significantly, there has been a noticeable change in the climate. The summers are getting a little warmer and the winters are getting a little shorter. The ranges of some plant species and the animal species that rely on them are changing. In addition to exposing new areas, the retreating grey ice sheets that still cover portions of the northern continent are altering the weather and wind patterns that people have come to rely on. Both human communities and their animal companions will need to adjust to these changes. When migrating to new areas, some species might require assistance, others might require help adjusting to new environmental factors or food sources. As the world around them changes, the partnerships that once seemed so solid and long-lasting might need to be renegotiated. However, Nayeli is not depressed by these difficulties. In the past, her people have overcome obstacles by banding together. She has discovered that the secret is to view change as a chance to improve relationships and foster understanding, rather than as something to be feared or resisted. As she drifts off to sleep, she considers Stormwalker's unborn calf and the environment that the young mammoth will grow up in. Will the ice sheets keep receding in this world? Will the ecological niches created by climate change be filled by new species? Will it be necessary for people and their partners to acquire new abilities, collaborate in new ways, and comprehend one another in new ways? She finds the questions fascinating rather than concerning. After all, every generation encounters changes and manages to adjust while maintaining the most essential aspects of life. She feels that the fundamental idea that has led her people for many generations, the understanding that humans are not distinct from the natural world, but rather a part of it, and that their success is dependent on the success of every other species they coexist with, is more significant than any specific species or climate arrangement. As always, morning returns with fresh opportunities and challenges. To the relief of its human companions, the injured sloth continues to show signs of recovery. Stormwalker appears more agitated than normal, which raises the possibility that her time is running out. After repairing their dam, the giant beavers created a new pond that will serve as a home for fish and water birds. But there's also something surprising this morning. From the west, a lone traveler leads a creature that has never been seen in the village. It is obviously a horse, but it is bigger than any horse that has ever existed. It has a coat that changes color in the sun and a demeanor that conveys intelligence and self-reliance. Equally fascinating is the traveler herself. No one can identify the materials used to make her clothes, and the tattoos on her skin are not typical of any known settlement. Although the underlying language appears familiar, her accent is so thick that it is nearly impossible to understand what she is saying. She comes from far to the west, beyond the great mountains that most of them have never seen. The villagers discover after careful questioning and patient repetition. She explains that although her people have coexisted peacefully with these massive horses for many generations, their homeland is changing in ways that make it challenging for them to maintain their traditional way of life. She claims that the horses are some of the last of their kind. The majority of their preferred habitat has been lost due to climate change, and the population that remains is too small to survive on its own without help. In order to find communities that might be willing to give some of the horses new homes and possibly share knowledge about how to help species adapt to changing conditions, her people have sent her eastward. Nayeli had been contemplating just such a challenge the previous evening. This species is in crisis, and its human partner is bringing it here to ask for cooperation in solving a problem that impacts both the human and animal communities, rather than charity. The proposal is discussed by the village council. It's a group of people whose knowledge and experience have gained them the respect of their neighbors, not a formal council in the sense that we might think of it. With the injured sloth sleeping soundly close by and the enigmatic horse grazing beneath the watchful gaze of several inquisitive kids, they sit in a circle in the healing grove under the shade of the old trees. Practical issues are raised in the discussion that follows. Do they have the means to care for more large animals? Do they know enough about how horses behave and what they need to take care of? How quickly could they learn what they would need to learn? However, the discussion goes beyond pragmatic issues. Fundamentally, the question is whether they have an obligation to assist in the preservation of endangered species, even if those species are distant and have no historical ties to their community. Some contend that their primary obligations are to their own community and current animal partners. They have learned to coexist peacefully with the surrounding species for generations. Taking on additional duties might upset that balance and jeopardize everything they have worked so hard to achieve. Others note that when they initially started forming alliances with megafauna, their ancestors had to make similar choices. Instead of concentrating solely on their immediate survival, those early humans decided to take chances in order to achieve a greater goal. Maybe it's time for their generation to make similar decisions. With breaks for meals and taking care of other daily responsibilities, the conversation lasts all morning and into the afternoon. A consensus slowly starts to form. Due to their limited resources and expertise, they are unable to take in all of the Western horses. However, they can take in a few, get to know their needs, and possibly use them as a springboard to establish other populations in communities with different capacities and resources. More significantly, they can impart their knowledge about assisting species in adapting to their changing environment. Their encounters with the mammoths, the beavers, and the enormous ground sloths have taught them methods that may be useful for horses and other animals dealing with comparable difficulties. The Western visitor accepts the village's offer as the sun sets on the second day, clearly relieved and appreciative. Two of her horses, both young females who could eventually add to a breeding population, will be left here. In exchange, she will bring with her extensive understanding of adaptation strategies, as well as assurances of continued assistance and communication. The evening meal turns into a celebration of the new partnership and the ideal it stands for. Survival in a world that is constantly changing depends more on collaboration, communication, and a readiness to support one another in adjusting to new situations than it does on isolation or resource hoarding. The Western traveler tells tales of her homeland and the struggles her people face as the meal comes to an end. The distribution of plants and the flow of rivers are changing as a result of the great mountains surrounding their valley losing their glaciers. While some species find it difficult to adjust, others are flourishing in the new environment. Her people have experienced failures that have taught them hard lessons about the limits of intervention, but they have also had some successes in aiding species transition. The villagers, who have witnessed comparable changes in their own area, find great resonance in her stories. Beyond the immediate horse arrangement, bonds are formed through shared experiences. By the end of the evening, the foundation for a much more extensive relationship between the two communities has been established, one that may offer reciprocal assistance as both deal with the difficulties of a changing global environment. There is a different kind of drama on the third morning. As the sun rises, the pregnant mammoth stormwalker goes into labor. This is the moment that Kale and the other beast speakers have been dreading and preparing for. They are very knowledgeable about caring for adult mammoths, but they have never assisted in a mammoth's birth from beginning to end, and giving birth is always dangerous. There are similarities and differences between the process and human birth, similar in that it calls for endurance, encouragement, and the ability to step in if issues develop. The scale is significantly larger, and the typical rhythms and sounds are not like anything that people have ever heard. With the help of the other mammoths, who appear to comprehend their part in the process, Stormwalker works through the morning with amazing poise. The villagers congregate at a respectful distance, providing support by being present without crowding or interfering unless absolutely necessary. When the birth finally takes place, it happens quickly and dramatically. A tiny, damp figure is lying in the grass behind Stormwalker, already straining to stand on unsteady legs. And then she is straining with the effort of labor. Many people are moved to tears by the sight, not only because of the miracle of new life, but also because this birth signifies the survival of a species that might have easily gone extinct. The male calf appears healthy and alert, despite being smaller than anticipated. He was able to stand and find his way to his mother's milk in less than an hour. Exhausted but seemingly in good health, Stormwalker shows the same patience she has displayed throughout her pregnancy as she leads him through his first feeding. Many people in the village realize that this is an unprecedented moment as word of the successful birth spreads. Since the beginning of the species' evolution, this might be the first mammoth to be born solely in human care. In contrast to the hunters his wild ancestors learned to fear, the calf will grow up knowing humans as partners and protectors. However, the moment is significant in more ways than one. The successful birth demonstrates that humans can sustain megafauna reproduction in addition to their survival. This creates opportunities that were never given much thought by earlier generations. Could they aid in the recovery of endangered species? Could they steer the development of human-animal relationships in ways that are advantageous to both parties? The acknowledgement of new responsibilities tempers the celebrations that follow the birth, which continue long into the evening. No human currently has the knowledge and abilities needed to raise a mammoth calf. As Stormwalker assumes the role of mother, with all the protective instincts that go along with it, the village's relationship with her will need to change. Longer-term questions will also require answers. As the young mammoth matures and forms its own personality, how will it interact with people? Will it have to work out its own terms, or will it accept the partnership arrangements that its mother has lived under? When it reaches breeding age, will it be able to build suitable relationships with possible mates, or will its unique background cause problems? Although there are currently no answers to these questions, they illustrate the types of difficulties that the village has come to welcome. Every new advancement, effective modification, and unanticipated difficulty contributes to the body of knowledge that supports the success of all their collaborations. The village's daily activities, which include encounters with creatures that most of human history would consider mythical, return to something approaching routine as the fourth day dawns. Although its human companions choose to stay in the village for a few more days to make sure the healing process is finished, the injured sloth is now strong enough to walk on its own. Under his mother's care and the community's attentive watch, the newborn mammoth calf, now known as Little Thunder for his startlingly loud vocalizations, continues to flourish. As the Westerner gets ready to leave, she realizes that she is no longer traveling alone. Two young villagers who have both worked with large animals before have offered to go with her some of the way home. They will assist in caring for the horses she is leaving behind and will return to her people with comprehensive knowledge of the adaptation methods created in this valley. More significantly, they will act as living connections between communities that might need to help one another in ways they haven't yet thought of. These past few days have seen a wide range of discussions, from philosophical issues regarding the relationship between humans and nature to practical animal husbandry. The question of whether their way of life could be expanded to accommodate larger populations is one that is frequently raised. Small towns where people know one another and where the number of animals can be controlled by close personal ties and close observation are ideal for the partnership approach. However, what would happen if the current size of human populations were exceeded? Could a town of 300 or a city of 3,000 be governed by the same rules that govern a village of 30? The partnership model, according to some, has inherent limitations. Individual animal-human relationships take time and care that cannot be sustained on a larger scale. Others contend that by enabling more specialization and advanced care systems, larger populations may actually increase the viability of some partnerships. The question isn't scholarly. Rumor has it that communities to the south have expanded significantly while retaining their animal alliances. If those rumors are accurate, they imply that the ideas cultivated in tiny communities like this one may have more uses than anyone has yet to recognize. However, there are also stories that serve as warnings. Tragic outcomes for both people and animals can be found in tales of communities that attempted to grow too rapidly and took on more animals than they could adequately care for. At larger scales, it can be much more difficult to maintain the balance that seems so natural in small groups, and the consequences of failure are proportionately more severe. As the morning goes on, these theoretical conversations are anchored in the day-to-day tasks. The enormous beavers need care. They need help fixing a leak in one of their dams, and they appear to prefer human help. Humans must perform this delicate work in cold water with animals whose size and strength could easily injure anyone who makes a thoughtless move. However, the beavers are exceptionally kind companions, employing their enormous fangs with surgical accuracy and somehow coordinating their activities with human assistants who move considerably more slowly and erratically than their own. When the repair is finished, both species appear to be happy with the outcome, even though it takes the majority of the morning. The project is made possible by the beavers' natural strength and engineering instincts, while the humans have contributed the planning abilities and fine motor control that the beavers lack. The villagers occasionally forget how extraordinary this type of interspecies cooperation would seem to most humans throughout history, because it has become so commonplace. A fundamental shift in perspective regarding the relationship between humans and the natural world is represented by the notion that creatures of different species could collaborate as true partners, each contributing their special skills to achieve common objectives. A different kind of visitor arrives in the afternoon, a family of cave bears that the locals haven't seen in months. In contrast to beavers and mammoths, these are not partners. The kind of close working relationships that characterize village life are not possible for cave bears because they are too solitary and unpredictable. However, they are also not adversaries. Between the human population and the bears that occasionally traverse their territory, a sophisticated understanding has grown over time. The bears offer valuable services that are not available in any other way. They can identify some kinds of medicinal plants that humans have trouble finding thanks to their acute sense of smell. They can clear landslides or dig caverns that offer refuge in inclement weather thanks to their strength and digging prowess. In exchange, people share foods that bears especially like and tend to injuries that bears are unable to heal on their own. However, the relationship necessitates careful management and ongoing attention. Even when cave bears are attempting to be helpful, they are dangerous creatures, and what they consider helpful doesn't always match what humans would consider helpful. When a bear moves boulders to clear a blocked stream, it may also reroute the water in ways that humans would prefer to keep dry in flood areas. Curiosity about the newcomers to the village appears to be the driving force behind the current visit. The lead bear, a massive female known to the villagers as Shadow Walker, approaches the horse enclosure politely, but clearly shows interest. The horses, obviously uneasy but not in a panic, gaze at the bear with the kind of focus that indicates they have seen such animals before. Shadow Walker examines the horses in a methodical and comprehensive manner. She repeatedly goes around the enclosure, using her sensitive nose to test the air and occasionally making quiet huffing noises that appear to be a kind of communication. The horse's soft nickering in response indicates that whatever conversation is going on is not antagonistic. Perhaps an hour later, Shadow Walker appears content with her research. Through a complicated series of sounds and gestures, she expresses her approval of the new arrangements as she approaches the area where a number of villagers have been observing the interaction. Although it took years to develop, this type of diplomacy has a significant purpose. The bear's willingness to adapt to changes in the valley helps prevent those changes from upsetting the larger ecosystem in ways that could have an impact on everyone. The bear family leaves as silently as they came, leaving a gift that exemplifies the high level of interspecies communication in this valley as evening draws near. Shadow Walker has left a little heap of herbs and roots near the village's food storage area, which the villagers don't immediately recognize. It turns out that these rare plants, which only grow in the high mountains where bears spend most of their time, have potent healing qualities. The bear's profound comprehension of human needs and values is demonstrated by this gift. They have made the effort to bring examples from their own area because they are aware that the villagers value new medicinal plants. The bears have effectively paid in advance for any future services they might require from the humans, so it's also a kind of trade. Discussion of the day's events and conjecture about their potential implications for the future liven up the evening meal. Ideas for additional projects that could profit from human-beaver cooperation have been sparked by the successful partnership on the dam repair. Everyone has been reminded by the bear visit of the intricate web of connections that goes well beyond the borders of the village. Additionally, the injured sloth's continued recovery has increased trust in the community's capacity to assist species in adjusting to their changing environment. It may be more difficult to identify the most important development, though. It's the increasing awareness that the community's relationship with nature is entering a new stage. Their ancestors formed alliances based mostly on mutual aid and survival. Relationships founded on a sincere appreciation and respect for the distinct skills and viewpoints that every species contributes to their common ecosystem appear to be something more advanced being developed by the current generation. This evolution is far from finished and didn't happen all at once. However, its effects are evident everywhere, from the informal interactions between kids and mammoth calves to the intricate procedures that control interactions with potentially hazardous animals like cave bears. The village has evolved into a setting where communication between species is not only feasible but commonplace, and where the lines separating the animal and human communities are not rigid but rather flexible. The Western traveler finalizes her departure preparations as the week comes to an end. During her stay, she has gained a lot of knowledge, but perhaps more significantly, she has made relationships that will last beyond her time there. Now that the village has connections to a community hundreds of miles away, there are opportunities for future collaboration and assistance that neither side could have previously envisioned. It appears that the two horses she is leaving behind have settled into their new surroundings quite nicely. Within the daily rhythm of the village, they have developed their own routines and started to build bonds with both human and animal residents. The early indications are positive, but it will take time to ascertain whether these connections can grow into real partnerships. Ceremonies that combine emotional farewell with practical preparation mark her departure. The entire village comes together to wish her a safe journey, and each family gives her something to take with them, such as travel-friendly dried foods, potentially useful tools, or life-saving medications. However, the most priceless presents are intangible: information, relationships, and commitments to future collaboration. Along with her physical supplies, she brings a plethora of innovative ideas and methods that could revolutionize her people's approach to their relationships with animals and the environment, as she leads her remaining horses out of the village and follows the route that will return her home across the mountains. Her visit will have far-reaching consequences that could affect species she will never directly encounter and communities she will never see. After she leaves, the village gets back into its routines, but it's not exactly the same as it was a week ago. The dynamic of everyday life has been subtly but significantly altered by the two horses. Their presence has drawn a variety of birds, opening up new avenues for study and observation. Their grazing habits have changed the grass's growth in some places, which could influence other animals' feeding preferences. Some of the smaller mammals that inhabit the area around the village appear to be influenced by their scent as well. Although these changes aren't disruptive, they serve as a reminder that any addition to an ecosystem has repercussions that last for a very long time. The villagers have learned to be aware of these impacts and modify their own conduct accordingly. As climate change continues to change the distribution and behavior of species throughout the region, this skill might become more and more important. The mammoth calf, Little Thunder, keeps growing and changing at a rate that astounds everyone who sees him. He is only a week old, but already he is displaying the intelligence that makes his species such exceptional companions. He appears to be able to identify specific people by sight and smell, reacting to them in different ways depending on how they have interacted with him and his mother in the past. More interestingly, he has started to investigate the limits of his world with the methodical curiosity that distinguishes highly intelligent young mammals. He learns about texture, weight, and flexibility by using his trunk to test various objects. He plays a variety of sounds, ranging from quiet chirps that seem to be intended to attract attention to louder trumpets that may be an attempt to communicate over greater distances. In order to record actions and reactions that could shed light on mammoth psychology and development, Kyle spends hours every day watching and interacting with the young mammoth. In addition to being extremely helpful if other mammoths in the valley give birth, this information is unprecedented in human knowledge because it provides detailed observations of mammoth behavior in a setting where the animals feel supported and safe rather than threatened or defensive. Although challenging, the work is fascinating. New sounds, new behaviors, and fresh proof of the complexity hidden behind those tiny, dark eyes are revealed every day. In addition to his physical development, Little Thunder is also forming his own unique personality, tastes, and perspectives on the world. The villagers are happy about some of these developments. It appears that both species find amusement in the calf's ability to play games with human children, which are gentle competitions of strength and agility. He appears to be aware that his human playmates are smaller and more delicate than he is, as evidenced by his impressive self-control in these exchanges. Some behaviors are more difficult. Little Thunder has started pushing against barriers and fences to test limits. He's learned that he has advantages because of his size in some circumstances, but he doesn't always use those advantages thoughtfully. It turns out that training a mammoth involves a level of patience and ingenuity never before attempted by a human. The way Little Thunder is altering the bond between his mother and the human race, however, may be the most important part of his growth. Since giving birth, Stormwalker has grown more assertive about her needs and preferences and more protective. Instead of merely accepting the plans that others make for her, she has started to choose where she wants to graze and when she wants to engage with people. This change marks a new stage in the relationship between humans and mammoths. The relationship is changing from one that is largely focused on human control of mammoth behavior to one that is more akin to equal partner negotiation. Stormwalker's increased assertiveness is a sign of her confidence in her relationship with humans and her willingness to voice her own priorities within that relationship, not of rebellion or animosity. Humans must also adapt to the changes. In order to anticipate Stormwalker's needs before she has to call for them to be met, Kyle and the other beast speakers are learning to read her moods and preferences more accurately. They are creating new communication channels that enable more intricate exchanges and advanced forms of collaboration. Although the work is hard, it is also very fulfilling. The developing relationship is more complex and nuanced than any relationship that existed prior to Little Thunder's birth. Both parties are gaining knowledge and developing skills that neither would have had on their own. The village starts getting ready for the upcoming colder months as autumn draws near. These preparations, collecting and storing food, repairing shelters, and creating warm clothing, are comparable to those made by human communities throughout history in certain respects. In other respects, however, the preparations are specific to communities that coexist with megafauna. To survive the winter, the mammoths require far more food than the village can produce with conventional means. However, mammoths can also help with gathering in ways that are impossible for humans to do alone. Because of their size and strength, they can reach food sources that are inaccessible to humans, such as high branches, roots buried deep in frozen ground, and fruits and nuts that grow in hazardous areas that are unsafe for people to safely traverse. Species work together to prepare for winter, each contributing in accordance with their skills and receiving in accordance with their requirements. The mammoths assist the humans and the rest of the community in gathering food. In exchange, people assist in preparing and preserving food in ways that increase its shelf life during the coldest months. The giant beavers help by preserving and enhancing the water systems that guarantee a sufficient supply of water during winter droughts and avoid flooding during spring thaws. The scope of the engineering projects they complete together is far greater than what either species could handle on its own, though in some cases they need human assistance, especially when precise tools are required to direct water flow. As winter draws near, even the relationship with the cave bears changes. As they look for food to help them accumulate the fat reserves they need for hibernation, the bears start to show up more regularly. Since well-fed bears are less likely to be dangerous during the months when food becomes scarce, the villagers try to accommodate these requests. Now that it is fully recovered, the injured giant sloth decides to stay with the village instead of going back to its native area. No one who has watched the creature over the past few weeks is surprised by the choice. The sloth has developed close relationships with a number of the people who looked after it while it recovered, and it appears to value the safety and company that come with living in a village. Its existence expands the community's potential in another way. Humans have never fully catalogued the edible and medicinal plants that giant sloths know about. They have the ability to transform some vegetation types that would be poisonous to other species into forms that are safe and nourishing for a greater variety of animals. Because their digestive systems are so effective, the waste products they produce make excellent fertilizer for the village gardens. Most importantly though, the sloth offers an alternative viewpoint on patience and time. Sloths move slowly because they see the world at a different pace, not because they are indolent or ineffective. Instead of noticing changes that happen over hours or days, they notice changes that happen over weeks or months. Their presence in the village acts as an early warning system for changes in the environment that faster moving species might not notice until it is too late to make an effective adaptation. The village changes as the first snows fall. The rhythm of longer nights and shorter days causes a slight slowdown in the pace of daily life. However, for many communities, winter is not the time of dormancy. Rather, it's a time for a variety of activities, such as planning and preparation, storytelling and crafting, and strengthening the bonds that keep the community going during its most trying time. The mammoths appear to love the snow, rolling in it and tossing it at each other and any humans who dare to join in their games with their trunks. Little Thunder clearly enjoys his first snowfall, attempting to catch snowflakes with his trunk and letting out an excited trumpet when he successfully balances tiny snowballs on his head. It takes some time for the horses to get used to the snow and cold because they are from a different climate. However, they quickly adjust, developing thicker coats and learning how to sift through snow to get to the grass below. Their existence opens up new winter travel options, enabling people to stay in touch with other communities, even when walking becomes challenging. Stories abound on winter evenings, and many of the best ones involve human and animal cooperation. Because of its ability to react to specific words and phrases, the giant sloth enhances dramatic scenes in stories with sound effects. By contributing their own vocalizations, the mammoths give the stories a sort of musical accompaniment. During thrilling scenes, the horses even join in, rhythmically stamping their feet. These group storytelling sessions are an example of art forms that genuinely engage multiple species as creative participants rather than just subjects or audiences, which is unprecedented in human culture, because they incorporate viewpoints and experiences that no single species could offer. The stories that come out of these sessions are unlike anything that humans alone could produce. During these winter evenings, one story comes to light that becomes especially important to the community. It tells the tale of the Great Migration, which is said to have taken place many generations ago when the region's shifting climate compelled all of the species to move to new areas. The narrative claims that the migration was only successful because various species discovered new ways to support one another. Supplies for smaller animals were carried by mammoths. The entire migration was able to cross hazardous waters thanks to the river crossings that giant beavers created. Cave bears shielded vulnerable people from predators that could have killed them. Planning and coordination by humans helped to keep the migration headed in the right direction. The narrative might be entirely mythical, or it might serve to preserve the memory of real-life occurrences from the distant past. Its significance, however, comes from its depiction of what is possible when species cooperate to achieve shared objectives rather than from its historical accuracy. It offers a model for collaboration that goes well beyond the regular alliances that keep village life going. That template becomes more and more pertinent as winter deepens. Everyone has noticed that the climate is changing more quickly. Compared to the seasonal patterns everyone remembers, the winter is warmer than usual, with more rain and less snow. The unusual weather confuses some plants, causing them to bud weeks earlier than usual. Some animals are changing when they migrate or when they hibernate. No one species can handle these changes on its own. Early blooming plants must be shielded from potential late frosts. Coordination of the disorganized animal migration patterns is necessary to avoid territorial and resource disputes. To guarantee that animals who awaken early from their winter slumber can find enough food, the modified hibernation schedules require assistance. The village handles these difficulties by working together and adapting, just like it does with the majority of difficulties. The mammoths protect early budding plants by forming windbreaks with their size and strength. In order to support animals whose schedules have been disturbed, the humans utilize their planning skills to organize food sharing. The giant sloth offers advice on which plants require more time to develop properly and which can be safely harvested early. However, the difficulties also draw attention to the shortcomings of small-scale solutions to major issues. Although the ecosystem is much larger than the village's borders, the village can adjust to changes within its own boundaries. Coordination between communities over great distances and unprecedented resource and knowledge sharing will be necessary for successful climate change adaptation. These bigger questions become more and more prevalent in the discussions around the winter fires. How can the village-level partnership model be expanded to the regional or continental level? How can communities that live hundreds of miles apart coordinate how they react to changes in the environment? How can species with varying habitat requirements and migration patterns be assisted in adapting without causing conflicts with other species? Although there are no simple answers to these questions, they are inspiring new concepts in organization, communication, and transportation that may revolutionize how the human and animal communities deal with environmental issues. These alliances, which started out as straightforward agreements for mutual survival, are developing into something far more ambitious, a coordinated response to planetary change in which several species cooperate as equal partners. This year's early arrival of spring validates everyone's concerns about the changing climate. Weeks before it should, the snow melts, causing flooding in some places and unexpected dryness in others. Although many plants appear stressed by the unusual conditions, the early plant growth that started during the warm winter is still going strong. The way the village has responded to these difficulties shows how much their skills have changed over time. The community now anticipates challenges and plans coordinated responses rather than merely responding to issues as they occur. Beavers adapt their dams to manage atypical water flows. The mammoths assist in moving plants that are having trouble in their original locations to more hospitable areas. Humans organize these activities, keep an eye on their success, and modify their tactics as necessary. The arrival of new refugees, not just the odd injured animal seeking assistance, but whole family groups escaping areas rendered uninhabitable by climate change, may be the most noteworthy development of this unusual spring. A family of giant deer travels from the south, where their customary grazing grounds are unusable due to drought. From the north, where their settlement and animal alliances have been destroyed by unusual flooding, a small group of humans arrives. Although these newcomers put a strain on the village's resources and social structures, they also present chances to broaden the network of connections that has been so beneficial to the community. The knowledge and abilities that each group of refugees brings to the village enhance those that are already there. The village's current animals have never encountered the kinds of vegetation that the giant deer are able to comprehend. The displaced people have water resource management skills that could be useful in a time of erratic precipitation. The partnership model's advantages and disadvantages are made clear by the process of integrating newcomers into the community. Human-animal cooperation principles are effective when forming relationships with new species, but they must be modified for use with larger groups or communities that have their own established organizational patterns. The village practically doubles in size throughout the spring, bringing with it both new opportunities and challenges. Greater specialization is made possible by the larger population. Some people can devote all of their attention to caring for animals, while others focus on growing plants, creating tools, or communicating over long distances. However, a larger population also puts a strain on resources and necessitates new organizational structures to preserve the harmony that was nearly effortless for smaller groups. The alterations lead to a choice that the original village could not have considered. The enlarged community chooses to split as summer draws near, with about half of the people moving to a new settlement in a valley a few days' drive to the east. The division is motivated by the realization that the partnership model may function best when implemented at an ideal scale that maintains the interpersonal relationships that enable cooperation, not by conflict or a lack of resources. Careful management of the division process guarantees that both settlements possess sufficient knowledge of all the fundamental abilities required for interspecies cooperation. Animal families are kept together whenever possible, but some species decide to split up among the settlements, establishing enduring bonds that will facilitate communication and assistance to one another. Both settlements are prospering in their own ways as the summer solstice draws near. With new skills and knowledge acquired from the year's experiences, the original village has reverted to something close to its traditional size. The new settlement is evolving its own personality and methods for overcoming the difficulties associated with interspecies cooperation. Now, a yearling mammoth with a personality as big as his expanding body, Little Thunder, has come to represent both continuity and change. In addition to embodying the adaptability that has enabled these relationships to develop and flourish, he also symbolizes the success of the human-mammoth partnership at its most personal level. His interactions with the new horses show that even species that have never experienced human partnership can benefit from the concepts of interspecies cooperation. The sounds of both communities meld into a symphony that speaks of harmony and plenty as the long summer days transition into the fall. The nickering of horses, the splashing of enormous beavers working on their engineering projects, the quiet chatter of people making plans for the future, and the trumpeting of mammoths all blend together. The intricate web of communications between communities, species, and individuals that maintains this vast community's cohesiveness may be the most important sound, even though it is inaudible to the naked human ear. Messages are carried by species whose ranges extend across the distances between human settlements, following routes created by migratory animals. Through networks that link not only the two villages, but also dozens of communities throughout the continent, information about weather, resource availability, and environmental changes is shared. The partnership model is best exemplified by this network, which coordinates entire ecosystems for adaptation and survival rather than just individual humans and animals. It's a picture of what can happen when relationships founded on respect and a common goal take the place of barriers between species. It's worthwhile to consider what this alternate history might teach us about our own relationship with nature as we come to the end of our journey into this fictional world. In this tale, the villagers' harmony with megafauna was not attained by means of advanced technology or paranormal powers. Patience, observation, respect, and a readiness to view other species as collaborators rather than resources allowed them to succeed. Their problems, such as resource scarcity, climate change, and juggling the demands of the community and individuals, are not all that dissimilar from those we face at home. Their responses, communication, cooperation, and adaptation across large networks might provide us with ideas for how to deal with our own environmental crises. Most significantly, their tale demonstrates that there is no need for dominance or exploitation in the interaction between people and the natural world. It's possible to envision and possibly even to establish partnership-based, mutually beneficial relationships in which animal intelligence and human intelligence work together to accomplish goals that neither could on its own. As our story comes to an end, twilight descends upon both villages, bringing with it the sounds of people assembling for evening meals and animals retiring for the night. A mammoth trumpets a goodnight cry in the distance, and other creatures across the valley respond, starting a communication chain that connects communities and species in a network of connections that crosses continents. Every sunset holds the promise of another day of collaboration, adaptation, and exploration in a world where the Ice Age never truly ended and humans never fully subdued nature. Although we never quite succeeded in creating it, we might still be able to do so with perseverance, discernment, and consideration for all living things on Earth. I appreciate you traveling with me into a possible future world. Perhaps you can picture the sound of mammoth calls reverberating across valleys where people and animals coexist as partners in the great adventure of life on Earth as you fall asleep tonight, wherever you are. I would love to hear about your own dreams of what might still be possible in our world if you found this exploration of what might have been to be enjoyable. Sweet dreams! Welcome, my new drowsy pals. I want you to look up at the night sky tonight and visualize the unthinkable, a second sun rising next to our own. A blazing twin star, not the gentle pinprick of Jupiter as we know it, would flood Earth with light, drive out the night, and change every season, shadow, and tale that people have ever told. We're not referring to space empires and double sunsets, found in science fiction. How two suns would have altered Earth itself, its climate, its oceans, and even the delicate spark of life that started in its waters, is the subject of this subtler, stranger story. Let's explore the alternate universe together, so turn down the lights, settle in, and perhaps cover yourself with a blanket. Please like the video and subscribe if you appreciate this type of slow-burning curiosity, but only if you truly find value in the topics we cover. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is for you at the moment, and what amazing what-if scenario we should pursue next. We're about to embark on a gentle exploration of one of the most intriguing hypothetical situations in astronomy. We're investigating a possible universe, a solar system in which our well-known giant Jupiter ignited into a second sun rather than turning into the striped, swirling world we know today. 4.5 billion years ago, in a whirling disk of gas and dust that would later become our solar system, the story starts. There were no planets, moons, or cozy blue worlds orbiting at the ideal distance from their stars back then. Large clouds of hydrogen and helium, combined with heavier elements formed in the cores of old stars that had existed and perished before our sun was even a glimmer of possibility, were all that existed. Something extraordinary was taking place in this primordial dance of matter and gravity. This disk's core was becoming hotter and denser, eventually forming the modern sun. However, another enormous accumulation was forming farther away in the colder regions of this cosmic building site. In those early days, it was just a developing mass of material that would decide the fate of everything else in our region of the galaxy. Today, we call it Jupiter. This is where the first interesting twist in our story occurs. Jupiter, as it is today, is sometimes referred to as a failed star, and that poetic description is accurate. The immense energy that gives stars their brightness is released when stars grow large enough for their cores to reach temperatures at which hydrogen atoms start to fuse into helium. Despite its greatness, Jupiter never quite made it to that point. It is roughly 75 times less massive than what would be required to maintain nuclear fusion. What if, however, things had turned out differently? What if Jupiter had been able to gain a little more mass during the early stages of planetary formation? Not even that much more. Perhaps it would have passed through that enchanted barrier and become what astronomers refer to as a brown dwarf, the faintest kind of star, if it had only been roughly 80 times the mass of Earth, or 13 times more. Massive than it actually became, it wouldn't have been an overnight change. Jupiter would have needed millions of years to accumulate enough material to reach that critical mass, even under our hypothetical conditions. The disk of material that surrounded our young sun at this time would have looked very different from what actually happened. We can hardly imagine how this larger Jupiter's gravitational pull would have agitated the cosmic soup. Imagine the early solar system as a huge clockwork mechanism where every component influences every other component. It would have been like swapping out one of the smaller gears for a much bigger and more potent one, our hypothetical stellar Jupiter. The ripple effects would have cascaded through the entire system, changing the orbits of forming planets, perhaps preventing some worlds from forming at all, while encouraging the creation of others in places where we find empty space today. The actual stellar ignition process would have been a slow awakening. Our proto-Jupiter's core would have become hotter and denser as it accumulated more and more material. Like a cosmic pressure cooker gradually building toward its moment of transformation, the pressure at the center would have increased over millions of years. Jupiter would have breathed its first air as a star when the temperature eventually rose to roughly 3 million degrees Celsius, at which point the first hydrogen nuclei would have started fusing into helium. The developing solar system would have being rocked by this flash of ignition. All of the other forming planets would have experienced a change in temperature and radiation environment due to the abrupt increase in energy output. Stellar winds would have blown away material that could have condensed into rocky worlds nearer this new star. Different kinds of planets could have formed if other areas that were previously too cold for specific chemical processes warmed up. I'd love to know if you're having fun exploring cosmic what-ifs. Tonight, from where in the world are you listening? Are you relaxing after a long day and allowing your thoughts to wander to these far-off possibilities, or are you just looking up at the stars through your window? If our blue world still managed to form in about the same location, let's imagine what this binary solar system, because that's what it would have been, might have looked like from Earth. Our night sky would have been the most obvious difference right away. We would have had a second sun instead of Jupiter as a bright but still very much a planet-like wandering star. Our familiar sun would have been far brighter than this stellar Jupiter. Because they primarily glow in infrared wavelengths that are invisible to the human eye, brown dwarfs are infamously faint. However, it would still have been discernible, possibly showing up as a dark, deep red ember. Instead of the harsh silver of moonlight, the light it cast would have been subtle, painting nighttime landscapes in soft russet tones. Such a system's orbital mechanics would have produced amazing patterns in our sky. Depending on how precisely the gravitational dynamics played out, our stellar Jupiter would have made one full orbit around our primary sun in an elliptical pattern, taking anywhere from 12 to 30 years. This implies that we would have seen multiple full cycles of our second sun's journey across the zodiac during the course of a human lifetime. Jupiter's infrared glow would have been strongest during specific times when it was closest to Earth, or while it was in the Sol, phenomenon known to astronomers as periapsis. These may have been referred to as warm seasons and were unrelated to the well-known summer-winter cycle on Earth. Imagine poets penning verses about the ember autumn when Jupiter dominated the midnight sky, or the ruby spring when it rose with the dawn. Our skies would have had a rhythm unlike anything we see now, from the orbital dance between our sun and this magnificent Jupiter. We may have had times when both suns were visible at the same time, depending on their relative positions, which would have produced double shadows and a twilight that lasted far longer than our typical sunset. These double sun days, when the interaction of red starlight and yellow sunlight produced unimaginable sky colors, would have been moments of wonder and joy. Without a bright Jupiter to overshadow the lesser stars, we would have had a closer understanding of the deep darkness of space in the past, when stellar Jupiter was on the far side of its orbit. Because the fainter stars and far-off galaxies were easier to see during these times, ancient astronomers may have had the best chance of making early discoveries about the actual structure of the universe. It would have had both subtle and profound effects on Earth itself. Instead of visible light, the majority of the energy released by brown dwarfs is infrared radiation, or heat. This implies that our planet would have been gently warmed by our hypothetical stellar Jupiter when it was closest to Earth, especially if one hemisphere was facing it at the time. The patterns of the climate would have been very different from what we see today. On top of the well-known astronomical seasons brought on by Earth's tilt, the extra infrared radiation would have produced what we might refer to as stellar seasons. As the infrared glow from the star Jupiter added to Earth's energy budget, some years may have been consistently warmer. It may have been colder in other years when it was farther away, resulting in lengthy cycles of climate change that would have fascinatingly influenced the evolution of life. The timescales on which these stellar seasons would have occurred would have been entirely different from those that we are accustomed to. Our stellar seasons would have coincided with Jupiter's orbital period around the Sun, which could have been anywhere from 12 to 30 years at a time, whereas Earth's regular season cycle annually. This implies that these long-term patterns are a part of generational memory rather than first-hand experience, with humans having only witnessed 2 or 3 full stellar seasonal cycles in their lifetimes. Consider the folklore that would have grown up around these long cycles. During the last Great Warming, when stellar Jupiter was at its closest, grandparents would tell tales of nearly tropical landscapes in contrast to the cooler decades that followed. The soft warmth of Jupiter's infrared glow may be unknown to children born during the far years when the star was far away, and they may only become aware of it as teenagers or young adults. A different story would have been told by the tides as, well, if it had formed much as it did, our familiar moon would still be there. However, because of the great distances involved, the gravitational pull of a much larger Jupiter would have produced additional tidal effects, albeit slight ones. These would have been measurable and cyclical, but they wouldn't have been significant. Maybe an additional inch or two of tidal range during some alignments. Marine ecosystems may have adapted to patterns that cycled not only with the lunar months, but also with the orbital period of the star Jupiter, suggesting that ocean life evolved around more intricate tidal rhythms. The subtle tidal variations that occurred when the Earth, the Moon, our Sun, and the stellar Jupiter all aligned in specific ways may have caused some fish species to time their spawning to coincide with those variations. These intricate overlapping cycles would have served as the foundation for coastal peoples' calendars and navigational systems. The electromagnetic environment of Earth would have been affected as well. Brown dwarfs generate their own magnetic fields and stellar winds in spite of their comparatively low energy output. Earth's magnetosphere would have been more active and under more pressure when stellar Jupiter was closest. As charged particles from our second sun interacted with Earth's magnetic field, this could have resulted in more frequent and spectacular auroras. The well-known green and blue auroras that we see today would not have been like these. Two distinct star types, stellar winds, interacting could have produced aurora colors and patterns that are not found in the modern world. These light displays may have inspired complex mythologies among ancient peoples who interpreted them as messages or conflicts between the spirits of the two suns. When we describe these kinds of changes, they appear minor, but over millions and billions of years, they would have added up to a whole new evolutionary narrative. If life on Earth had evolved at all, it probably would have followed routes that are nearly impossible for us to fathom. Because of the extra infrared radiation, some areas may have remained warm enough for liquid water and ongoing biological activity even during the coldest times in Earth's history, known as snowball Earth episodes, which happened multiple times in our actual timeline. Perhaps plants would have evolved to take advantage of the infrared radiation from our second sun, developing leaves that were more efficient at absorbing heat than light. It's possible that certain plants have developed complex systems for alternating between various forms of photosynthesis based on which sun was overhead, or even for utilizing both visible and infrared light to fuel their development at the same time. When we think about nocturnal life, the evolutionary implications become even more fascinating. In a system with a stellar Jupiter, there may have been enough infrared radiation during specific times to support a type of night photosynthesis. In contrast to our world, where nighttime is a time of relative energy scarcity for photosynthetic organisms, plants may have evolved to take advantage of this, radically altering the energy balance of ecosystems and opening doors for life forms that are not found on Earth. Animals would also have undergone distinct evolutionary histories. To benefit from the heat radiation from the star Jupiter, many creatures may have evolved improved infrared vision. This would have been advanced infrared vision that could detect movement, patterns, and shapes in the warm glow of our second sun, rather than the rudimentary heat sensing of contemporary snakes. Evolutionary arms races between predators and prey would have taken place, with some of the fighting taking place in light wavelengths that are invisible to humans. The lengthy orbital cycles of the star Jupiter would have affected animal migration patterns. It's possible that species have evolved to synchronize their movements with both the 12 to 30 year cycle of our second sun and the seasons on Earth. As Jupiter went through its orbital cycle, some animals may have been stellar migrants that traveled across the planet in search of the warmth of its infrared glow. But let's take a moment to look beyond Earth and imagine what the rest of our solar system might have been like if this stellar Jupiter had existed. In this alternate universe, would the planets that we know today, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the outer giants, have formed at all? As is often the case with these cosmic thought experiments, the answer is both yes and no. While some planets would have probably formed similarly to those in our own solar system, others might not have existed at all, or would have undergone significant changes. Given its proximity to our primary sun, Mercury most likely formed similarly to how it did in our timeline. At such close proximity to the overwhelming gravitational dominance of our sun, the impact of stellar Jupiter would have been negligible. Venus may have developed similarly, but its runaway greenhouse effect may have made it even hotter than it actually became due to the extra infrared radiation from stellar Jupiter's close approaches. For example, a larger Jupiter might have been advantageous for Mars. Because Jupiter's gravity disrupted the asteroid belt and limited the amount of material available for Mars to sweep up during its formation, Mars was unable to grow as large as Earth or Venus in our actual solar system. However, the dynamics of planet formation in the inner solar system would have been entirely different in our alternate timeline, with stellar Jupiter possibly in a different orbit or with different gravitational influences. It's possible that the asteroid belt itself never existed, or that it formed in a totally different place. Mars may have had access to a lot more building materials during its formation, if not for this barrier of disturbed material. In our alternate timeline, Mars may have grown larger than Earth, with enough mass to hold onto a thick atmosphere and liquid water over geological timescales, rather than the small frigid world we know today. Imagine a Mars that, for billions of years, had flowing rivers, huge oceans, a thick protective atmosphere, and a magnetic field that never faded. This alternate Mars may have developed not only life, but also complex ecosystems that are as diverse and complex as Earth's, thanks to the extra warmth provided by stellar Jupiter during some of its orbit. It's possible that intelligent life first appeared on such a world in our solar system, undisguised, where two suns rose and set in intricate patterns, and where the seasons were controlled by Jupiter's slow orbital dance as well as planetary tilt. Martian civilizations may have grown. Motivated by the need to comprehend and forecast the intricate celestial mechanics of their two-sun system, their astronomy and mathematics would have been far more advanced than those of our own ancestors. The story of the outer solar system is even more fascinating. It's possible that Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune formed very differently, if at all. In the outer reaches of the solar system, the entire choreography of worlds coming together would have been altered by a stellar Jupiter. The gravitational dynamics of planet formation are delicately balanced. It's possible that Saturn, Jupiter's present partner in the cosmic dance of gas giants, never formed. There may not have been enough material left over in that part of the solar system for a second gas giant to form, because so much material was used to create a stellar Jupiter. On the other hand, if Saturn had formed, it might have ended up in a totally different orbit, possibly nearer the Sun, where it would have appeared to us as a much brighter and more noticeable object in the night sky. The outer solar system would have been affected in a cascade if Saturn had not been there. The orbits of Uranus and Neptune, if they formed at all, would have been very different without the gravitational pull of Saturn. It may never have happened, or it may have happened at a different time and with a different intensity. The delicate gravitational dance that in our timeline caused the late heavy bombardment, a time when asteroids and comets rained down on the inner planets. The evolution of life on Earth and Mars may have been significantly impacted by this. In our timeline, the late heavy bombardment brought organic compounds and water to the inner planets, but it also led to massive extinction events. The evolution of life might have gone much more smoothly in the absence of this bombardment or at a different time, without the devastating setbacks that created ecological niches for the emergence of new life forms in our timeline. Speaking of moons, let's take a moment to imagine what the family of satellites that would have orbited stellar Jupiter might have looked like. There are more than 70 known moons of Jupiter in our actual solar system, ranging in size from small asteroids that have been captured to massive bodies like Ganymede and Io. A brown dwarf's energy output and greater mass could have allowed stellar Jupiter to assemble an even more remarkable group of companions. These wouldn't simply be bigger versions of our familiar moons. Their stellar parents' strong infrared radiation would have produced completely different environments. It's possible that moons that are frozen, ice-covered worlds in our timeline have transformed into temperate, water-rich habitats that are ideal for the emergence of life. Think about what Europa's orbit around a starry Jupiter might have been like. In our timeline, Jupiter's gravity causes tidal heating that keeps Europa's subterranean ocean liquid. However, Europa might have had surface oceans beneath a dense, warm atmosphere in addition to a subsurface ocean if Jupiter had been a brown dwarf. A world with a climate akin to early Earth might have been formed by the interaction of internal tidal heating and external infrared radiation. A stellar Jupiter may have had an even more significant impact on Io, which in our timeline is the solar system's most volcanically active body because of Jupiter's tidal forces. Io may have been a world of nearly constant volcanic activity due to the extra heat from infrared radiation and even stronger tidal forces from the larger parent body. Stellar Jupiter's Io may have had a complex atmosphere and possibly even volcanic lakes of exotic compositions instead of the sulfur-dominated terrain we see today. The most fascinating theory, however, is that the star Jupiter may have ensnared or created moons that were genuinely Earth-like in size and makeup. A moon the size of Earth orbiting a brown dwarf at the proper distance might have had liquid water, a dense atmosphere, and all the other elements needed for the evolution of complex life. A world like that would have been tidally locked to its parent star, presenting the same face to the brown dwarf at all times, resulting in a landscape with perpetual day and night, due to the continuous infrared glow of the star Jupiter, the day sides of such a moon may have been warm and tropical. The night side would have been colder, but not frozen. Heat would have been redistributed globally by the dense atmosphere, resulting in a world with extreme weather patterns but possibly habitable conditions on all of its surface. Imagine ocean moons, with dense atmospheres where huge oceans remained liquid under overcast skies due to the mild heat from their brown dwarf sun. Because of the continuous warming on one side and cooling on the other, the weather patterns would have been completely different from anything found on Earth. It's possible that massive storm systems moved around the world, bringing cold, dry air in one direction and warm, humid air in the other. One of these moons may have developed into a second Earth-like body, orbiting the faint red glow of stellar Jupiter rather than our well-known sun. There, life may have developed in ways we can hardly fathom, tailored to the tidal forces, the extreme weather patterns, and the infrared glow that pervades the planet. It's possible that civilizations developed there and looked up at night to see not one but two suns in their sky, their own brown dwarf parent, which glowed like a cosmic ember that never moved from its position in the sky, and the bright yellow-white primary star we orbit, which appeared as a bright star moving slowly across their heavens. Based on knowledge of the orbital mechanics of their moon around their stellar parent and their stellar parent around the primary sun, their astronomy would have been essentially different from ours. In a universe like that, the consequences for humans' space travel would have been profound. We would have had a whole stellar system in our cosmic backyard rather than Jupiter, a far-off gas giant that is nearly impossible to reach with current technology. The benefits would have been incalculably higher, but the energy needed to reach Jupiter's moons would have been the same. Imagine space missions to planets and moons with their own weather, atmospheres, and possibly even life forms, rather than to frozen airless worlds. In addition to being feasible, the goal of interplanetary civilization would have been all but certain. Given that habitable worlds orbit the star Jupiter, humanity may have evolved into a multi-world species much earlier than our current reality would suggest. Human civilization's technological advancement could have taken entirely different paths. We could have concentrated on using the infrared radiation from stellar Jupiter much earlier, rather than creating nuclear power to replace fossil fuels. One of our earliest significant technologies may have been solar panels made to absorb infrared light instead of visible light. Priorities for space travel would also have changed. The goal of our space programs may have been to reach the warm, possibly habitable moons of stellar Jupiter rather than the frigid, inhospitable planets of Mars and Venus. Instead of trying to figure out how to survive in environments that were totally inhospitable to human life, we might have been working on reaching environments that were just very different from Earth. The technical challenges would have been different, but maybe more manageable. However, this poses intriguing queries about how civilization itself might have evolved. We have used the stars to guide us throughout human history, the motions of celestial bodies to tell the time, and the patterns we observe in the night sky to create myths. If we had been raised in a world with two suns, how would our cultures, religions, and entire worldview have changed? To comprehend the movements of the heavens, ancient astronomers would have faced a far more difficult conundrum. Our calendar systems may have been based on the orbital period of the star Jupiter, as well as the well-known solar year. Much earlier in human history, the intricacy of tracking two suns, their relative positions, and their impact on tides and climate would have fueled the advancement of advanced astronomy and mathematics. The practical need to comprehend and forecast. The intricate dance of double suns may have motivated our ancestors to develop trigonometry, calculus, and even fundamental physics centuries or millennia earlier. Navigators would have used the positions of both suns to pinpoint their location with previously unheard of accuracy, making navigation both more difficult and more accurate. Such a world would have an unimaginably rich mythology. In our alternate timeline, cultures may have created complex mythologies about the interaction between the bright and red suns and the fast and slow suns, just as we have stories about the sun and moon or day and night as opposing forces. They might have viewed them as cosmic parents, with Jupiter, the star, acting as the gentle mother and our primary sun as the strong father, offering consolation and warmth throughout its lengthy orbital cycles. Or they might have been viewed as enduring rivals engaged in a heavenly dance of rivalry and collaboration. It's possible that the times when both suns were visible were times of great strength and vitality, when great things were accomplished and heroes were born. Under the unhindered light of far-off stars, philosophers and poets may have produced their best work during the dark periods when stellar Jupiter was on the far side of its orbit. It's possible that religious systems evolved around the dual nature of solar worship, with some cultures finding spiritual significance in the steady, gentle warmth of stellar Jupiter, and others favoring the bright, active energy of our primary sun. The intricacy of celestial mechanics may have contributed to the early development of ideas regarding the mathematical harmony of the universe, which would have had a significant impact on the advancement of philosophy and science. Art would have changed as well. When both suns were visible at the same time, painters would have learned to capture not only the golden hour of sunset, but also the special quality of light. Color combinations and shadow effects that aren't found in our world would have been produced by the interaction of red and yellow light. It's possible that artists have created completely new ways to depict the delicate variations of infrared light, resulting in works of art that are beyond our comprehension. Poets would have composed poetry about the long night seasons when stellar Jupiter was far away and the stars shone with unusual clarity, about the ruby twilight when only the glow of stellar Jupiter remained, and about the double shadows cast by lovers walking hand in hand under two suns. Poetry's rhythms and meters may have evolved to mimic the intricate orbital patterns of the two suns, producing musical forms that literally mirrored the sphere's celestial music. With movements that lasted not just minutes but years, musicians may have created symphonies that mirrored the orbital rhythms of their two suns. These pieces were intended to be performed during various stellar seasons. Music that was literally cosmic in its scope and significance may have been produced by tuning instruments to harmonics that mirrored the mathematical relationships between the orbital periods of the planets and the two suns. In order to capitalize on the intricate patterns of lighting produced by two suns, architecture would have evolved. In order to create naturally heated spaces that were comfortable even during the coldest times of the stellar winter, buildings may have been designed with chambers that captured and concentrated the infrared radiation from stellar Jupiter. In order to allow natural light to illuminate interior spaces in patterns that varied not only daily and seasonally, but also over the longer cycles of stellar Jupiter's orbit, windows and openings may have been placed to track the movements of both suns across the sky. It's important to pause and consider the delicate balance that gave rise to our actual solar system as we consider these possibilities. The development of Earth as a habitable planet depended on Jupiter ceasing to grow just short of stellar ignition. In our real timeline, Jupiter acts as a kind of cosmic vacuum cleaner, using its immense gravity to capture or deflect asteroids and comets that might otherwise threaten Earth. The steady evolution of life on our planet has depended on this protective function. It's possible that a stellar Jupiter would have offered protection in different ways or in a less effective manner. It's possible that the extra heat from infrared radiation produced distinct comet and asteroid behavior patterns in the inner solar system. The thermal effects of the radiation from the brown dwarf may have vaporized or pushed some objects into different orbits. The intricate dynamics of a binary star system may have caused others to be gravitationally scattered in new directions. There would have been different risks and benefits in writing the story of life on Earth in such a universe. We may have gained other types of stability, but we may have lost some of Jupiter's protective effects. Some of the severe ice ages that have occurred throughout the history of our planet may have been avoided thanks to the extra energy input from stellar Jupiter, which may have helped maintain Earth's climate during times when our primary sun was weaker. The evolution of intelligence itself could have gone in a different direction. The complex celestial mechanics of a two-sun system would have provided both challenges and opportunities for evolving brains. It's possible that evolutionary pressure for the development of mathematical and spatial reasoning skills came from the necessity to comprehend and forecast intricate orbital patterns. In order to plan for seasonal changes, navigate, and time different biological processes, creatures that were better able to comprehend the complex dance of the heavens may have had a survival advantage. Thinking about these other possibilities has a profoundly moving effect. It serves as a reminder that the cosmos in which we live, the solar system that molded us, and the very fact that our blue world exists at all are merely one way to navigate an endless array of cosmic opportunities. If they lived in a system with only one sun, beings on a warm moon of the star Jupiter might be having their own version of this conversation in another universe. They might be wondering what it would be like if their brown dwarf parent had never ignited. The science underlying these conjectures is as exquisite as the creativity they arouse. Brown dwarfs, the failed stars that stand in for planets and true stars, are still being found all over our galaxy. Every one we discover gives us new insight into the prerequisites for stellar ignition and the fine balance between gravity and nuclear physics that determines whether a ball of gas turns into a star like our sun or a planet like Jupiter. Brown dwarfs, with their own planetary systems, have been discovered recently. These dim stars now orbit worlds in ways that were unthinkable only a few decades ago. It's possible that some of these planets are getting precisely the correct quantity of infrared radiation to keep liquid water on their surfaces. In a way, somewhere among the stars, nature might have already produced the type of system we've been envisioning tonight. We can see what such worlds might actually look like thanks to the 2017 discovery of the TRAPPIST-1 system. 7 Earth-sized planets orbit a red dwarf star in this system. It's not quite a brown dwarf, but it's cool and dim enough to give us a rough idea of what planets around stellar Jupiter might have looked like. As might be expected from moons orbiting stellar Jupiter, all of these worlds are tidally locked to their star, and several of them orbit in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. One of the most important questions our thought experiment raises is this: would life as we know it have existed in a solar system with a stellar Jupiter? The answer is highly compelling to think about because it depends on so many factors that it borders on pure speculation. One stable star, provided the light for the development of life on Earth. Our chemistry, biology, and even the most fundamental cellular functions are all regulated by the sun's particular wavelengths and energy output. Life would have had to adjust to a far more complicated energy environment in a system with two suns, one dim and red, the other bright and familiar. The evolution of photosynthesis's biochemistry would have been different. During times when only stellar Jupiter was illuminating the world, plants may have evolved complex systems for alternating between photosynthesis, optimized for visible light during the day, and processes designed to capture infrared energy. It's possible that certain plants have evolved to use both wavelengths at once, producing biological solar panels that are far more efficient than any technology we've yet created. It's possible that animals' vision evolved to see farther into the infrared spectrum, giving them a kind of heat vision that would appear unnatural to humans. It's possible that predators hunted by comparing their prey's body heat to the warm infrared radiation background from the star Jupiter. It's possible that prey animals created biological technologies for thermal invisibility by developing camouflage that functioned in both visible and infrared wavelengths. It's possible that the chemistry of life itself took a different route, giving rise to biological forms that would seem as alien to us as anything we might find among the stars. It's possible that biochemical processes developed to exploit the two distinct forms of stellar radiation that were available, resulting in metabolisms that were more resilient and complex than anything found on Earth. The possibility that life in such a system might have had more, rather than fewer, opportunities to evolve, however, is perhaps the most intriguing. There may have been more ecological niches, more environmental pressures driving evolution, and more opportunities for life to experiment with different forms and strategies due to the potentially habitable moons orbiting bright Jupiter, the complex climate variations brought about by the interaction of two suns and the different combinations of visible and infrared radiation received by different orbital zones. It's possible that the moons of the star Jupiter have evolved into evolutionary laboratories, with each one producing distinct life forms tailored to its own unique mix of tidal forces, orbital features, and infrared heating. Infrared photosynthesis may have been the primary source of life on some moons, resulting in ecosystems that flourished in what would appear to us to be constant darkness. As their orbits brought them closer and farther away from their brown dwarf parent, others may have developed life forms that could move between different temperature zones. The idea that life might have developed interplanetary travel much earlier in such a system is one particularly fascinating possibility. The problem of space travel may have been resolved by evolution itself, since there are several habitable worlds in close proximity, separated by distances that would be difficult but not impossible for highly developed biological organisms to traverse. It's possible that life forms have evolved to endure in the void between moons, going into dormant states along the way, and then reviving when they arrive at a new world. It is possible that such interplanetary life spread genetic material to the moons of the star Jupiter, forming multi-world ecosystems. Evolution would have produced life forms that are nearly unthinkable in our single-world experience, operating not only on individual planets but also across entire stellar systems. Tonight, as our cosmic journey draws to a close, it's worthwhile to consider the lessons that these thought experiments can impart about our position in the cosmos. In reality, the tale of what might have happened if Jupiter had turned into a star is one of contingency, showing how the universe as we know it is only one strand in an endless web of possibilities. Every planet, star, and galaxy symbolizes innumerable opportunities for different outcomes. We might be living in a different universe if a cloud of gas had been slightly denser here or slightly less dense there, if the timing of star formation had been slightly different, or if any one of 1,000 variables had changed slightly. The importance of our real universe is not diminished by this. If anything, it makes it more precious. The single sun, stable system that gave rise to life on Earth predictable tides and seasons, and the ideal conditions for the evolution of intelligence and its eventual reflection on its own origins is an extraordinary combination of circumstances. However, as we've discussed tonight, even radically different situations could have produced their own unique forms of beauty, as well as unique opportunities for life, consciousness, and wonder. A universe with a stellar Jupiter would have been different from ours, but not better or worse. It would have presented its own special chances for complexity, development, and the eventual appearance of sentient beings that could comprehend their cosmic setting. When we examine these other possibilities, the question of whether we are alone in the universe assumes new dimensions. In our real timeline, we look for planets that resemble Earth-orbiting stars that resemble the Sun in order to find life in the universe. However, the universe we envision tonight raises the possibility that life could emerge in configurations far more exotic than those suggested by our Earth-centric presumptions. Maybe creatures that evolved on tidally locked moons around brown. Dwarfs are debating the possibility of life on their own, wondering if life could exist on planets orbiting single stars without the complex rhythms and gentle warmth that they believe are necessary for biological development. One of the most beneficial results of speculative activities like tonight's journey is this change in perspective. We can learn more about what might be possible in our own solar system and in the vast expanse of space beyond by speculating about drastically different scenarios for the emergence of life and intelligence. Jupiter is still a failed star in our real's timeline, a massive planet with whirling clouds and enigmatic depths that unintentionally protects Earth while serving as a guardian of the outer solar system. Each of its 4 largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, has a unique story to tell and is a world unto itself. While Io's volcanic activity demonstrates the immense forces at work in Jupiter's gravitational field, Europa's subterranean ocean may still support life today. These moons serve as a reminder that, despite the absence of a stellar Jupiter, our solar system is full of potential life-supporting worlds and environments that push the boundaries of what we think is possible. Our actual universe is amazing enough to arouse wonder and curiosity without having to change into something new. With its own magnetic field and larger size than Mercury, Ganymede may be concealing an ocean beneath its icy surface. Ancient and severely cratered, Callisto holds a record of the violent past of the early solar system. These worlds represent life possibilities that we are just starting to comprehend. Even within our timeline, there are still surprises and opportunities to be found in the search for life in our own solar system. Even our familiar solar system has mysteries and possibilities that surpass anything we could have imagined in our alternate timeline tonight, as evidenced by the discovery of organic compounds on Mars, the complex chemistry of Titan's atmosphere, and the geysers of Enceladus that shoot water ice into space. Maybe when you go to sleep tonight, you'll dream of double shadows and ruby twilights, of warm moons circling a gentle brown dwarf, of civilizations that lived by 2 suns and told tales of cosmic dances we can hardly fathom. These fantasies are exercises in comprehending the profound laws that control the formation and evolution of worlds, the adaptation and flourishing of life, and the emergence of intelligence from the cosmic dance of matter and energy. Thinking about these cosmic what-ifs creates a beautiful blurring of the lines between science and imagination. All of the theories we have discussed tonight are based on actual physics, astronomy, and knowledge of the origins of planets, stars, and life. However, each possibility creates opportunities for wonder that are beyond the scope of pure science. Cosmos, we can always learn more together. You may see Jupiter with fresh eyes tomorrow when you gaze up at it in the evening sky. That steady, bright point of light that doesn't twinkle like the far-off stars. You might envision the binary system that may have harbored unimaginable forms of life, the second sun that may have warmed alien moons, and the stellar Jupiter that never existed. However, you might also have a greater understanding of our real Jupiter as a magnificent world that helped make Earth habitable, and a failed star that accomplished something even more amazing, establishing a stable, protective presence in our solar system that allowed a small blue planet to support life for billions of years. Every evening, the night sky above us continues to dance between what is and what could have been. Our well-known giant, Jupiter, orbits the Sun in a stately 12-year orbit, occasionally passing near enough to Earth for amateur telescopes to see its racing moons and cloud bands. During those moments of observation, we are seeing the real result of cosmic processes that could have gone in a different direction and produced the alternate universe that we have been studying together. Modern astronomy continues to find brown dwarfs scattered throughout our galaxy, each one a reminder of stellar Jupiter's path not taken. Tidally locked worlds drenched in infrared glow, intricate weather patterns influenced by the interaction of orbital mechanics and stellar radiation, and possibly even life forms adapted to conditions that would seem impossible to us are all possible. Outcomes of some of these dim stars' planets. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its unprecedented ability to detect infrared radiation, is giving us our first detailed looks at these brown dwarf systems. We learn something new about the boundary between planets and stars with each observation, as well as the factors that determine whether a ball of gas will ignite into stellar fusion or stay a giant planet like Jupiter. These findings serve as a reminder that the cosmos is much more diverse and strange than our single sun viewpoint would imply. The cosmic tale we have envisioned tonight is not merely conjecture, rather it is an investigation of possibilities that are present in different forms across the galaxy. The dream of stellar Jupiter could come true somewhere in the future, beneath alien skies warmed by the glow of brown dwarf suns. These alternative possibilities have philosophical ramifications that go beyond astronomy to address basic issues. Regarding the essence of existence, what does this tell us about the role of necessity and chance in cosmic evolution if minor changes in the early solar system could have produced such drastically different results? According to some scientists and philosophers, we live in a multiverse, which is an endless network of parallel universes where every possible result of every quantum event really happens. There would undoubtedly be alternate realities in such a multiverse where Jupiter turned into a star, life developed on tidally locked moons, and human civilization flourished under the combined influence of two suns. The multiverse is a potent metaphor for the limitless possibilities that surround us, regardless of whether it is a real world. From the first stars to the development of consciousness, every point in cosmic history represents a branching point where reality could have gone in a different direction. There are countless stories that could have been told, and our universe is only one of them. This viewpoint has the potential to be both inspiring and humbling. It is humbling because it serves as a reminder of how dependent our existence is and how many improbable things had to happen in precisely the right order for us to be here thinking about these issues. However, it is also encouraging because it implies that the universe is essentially creative, always creating new possibilities and always able to astonish us with complexity and beauty we never would have thought possible. In the end, the tale of stellar Jupiter is a tale of wonder itself, of the ability of the human mind to envision other options, to investigate possibilities, and to discover beauty and significance in situations that only exist in the mind. This ability to speculate creatively is not distinct from scientific knowledge. Rather, it is a crucial component of scientific progress and the expansion of our understanding of what is feasible. Every major scientific breakthrough started with someone asking, what if? What if the Earth orbits the Sun rather than the other way around? What if time and space are intertwined? What if the universe is getting bigger? What if basic chemicals could develop into life? Imaginative fiction and scientific speculation frequently blur more easily than we might think. This type of scientific imagination is demonstrated by tonight's investigation of stellar Jupiter. We have created a comprehensive alternative history of our solar system by integrating our knowledge of planetary formation, stellar evolution, and the prerequisites for life. This goes beyond simple storytelling. It's a means of assessing our comprehension, investigating the ramifications of scientific understanding, and getting ready for the discoveries that lie ahead among the stars. The scenarios we've envisioned. Tonight may turn out to be more pertinent than we anticipated as space exploration progresses, sending us on missions to Jupiter's moons and finding exoplanets around far-off stars. We will be able to interpret the strange and wonderful worlds we will undoubtedly discover as our astronomical capabilities continue to advance thanks to the methods we develop for comprehending alternate solar systems. In reality, the hunt for solvable extraterrestrial life is a search for cosmic alternatives, for possible ways that biology might have developed in various settings, around various kinds of stars, and under various circumstances. Our capacity to identify life when we see it, even if it takes unexpected forms, is enhanced by every scenario we can think of. Astronomers have recently found planets orbiting binary star systems, which are worlds with two suns actually illuminating the sky. These findings demonstrate that the universe is even more creative than our wildest theories indicated, transforming science fiction scenarios into scientific reality. We might one day find a system that resembles a hypothetical stellar Jupiter, complete with livable moons and intricate ecosystems that have adapted to infrared radiation. Rapid advancements are being made in the technology for identifying such systems. In order to find the chemical indicators of life, future space telescopes will be able to examine the atmospheres of far-off planets. We will know that nature has indeed produced the type of system we have studied tonight if we discover oxygen, water vapor, and organic compounds surrounding a planet orbiting a brown dwarf. But even if we never find exact parallels to stellar Jupiter, the exercise of imagining such systems has value in itself. It pushes the boundaries of our knowledge, tests our presumptions, and gets us ready for a universe that is probably much stranger and more amazing than anything we can currently fathom. There are many real and imagined wonders in the universe, and sometimes the best gift we can give ourselves is just to take in its amazing complexity. The basic wonder is the same whether Jupiter had turned into a star or remained the gas giant it is today, whether we lived under one sun or two, or whether life began on Earth or on some far-off moon, somewhere in the vast cosmos, matter arranged itself so that it became conscious of its own existence, wondered about its origins, and imagined other possibilities. As you consider these cosmic possibilities, that miracle is occurring in your mind at this very moment. Consciousness, and the ability to dream of worlds that might have been, to find beauty in the dance of light and gravity, and to tell stories that bridge the gap between what is and what could have been, emerged in a universe so vast and complex that it is incomprehensible. We can see those ruby twilights and double-shadowed landscapes in the theater of our imagination, but the soft glow of stellar Jupiter will never warm our faces in this timeline. We can stroll on tidally locked moons, where one side experiences a gentle yet eternal night and the other side enjoys a perpetual infrared day. We can envision societies that use the orbital dance of brown dwarfs to measure time, and that created advanced mathematical formulas capable of forecasting the intricate gravitational interactions of binary star systems. Our mental universe is enlarged by these imagined worlds, which deepens our sense of awe and our understanding of the intricate web of circumstances that led to our real existence. They serve as a reminder that the universe may be exploring its own possibilities through consciousness itself, imagining what might have been while appreciating what is. Rest well tonight, my fellow traveler, in this amazing universe of ours. Dream of unending possibilities that lie ahead of us in the gloom between the stars, of worlds both real and imagined, of stars that never went out and never ceased burning. And when you wake up tomorrow, keep in mind that you are living in one of those possibilities, a universe so bizarre and lovely that it barely requires our imagination to be amazing. Even though the history of stellar Jupiter will never be recorded in our timeline, it serves as a reminder of the amazing inventiveness and contingency of the universe we live in. We develop a greater appreciation for what is when we ponder what could have been. We may also catch a glimpse of what is yet to be found among the countless stars that illuminate our real sky. Good night, and may the wonder of worlds that dance just beyond the edge of reality and the soft warmth of impossible suns fill your dreams.